Welcome back to Lights, Camera, Whatever. First of all, I got to say thank you for following the channel and thank you for watching each episode. I greatly appreciate it. Today, we're going to jump into a very, very, of course, sensitive and touchy topic from the movie called A Son. A Son. If you go to Netflix and type it in, remember, it does have English subtitles. I won't hurt you like that. So, my name is Ray. Welcome back to Lights, Camera, Whatever. A Son is the topic today. First, I will read the description. The uncanny tales reveal a world where individuals face the tragic consequences of social pressure, parental oppression, and family dysfunction. I will read that twice. These uncanny tales reveal a world where individuals face the tragic consequences of social pressure, parental oppression, and family dysfunction. So we got our questions here. You know, we got some good juicy questions because we jump into the whatever. And after you watch this episode, I hope to hear your comments because it's very, very important. Now, first question, should killers be given a second chance in society? For me personally, remember, this is my perspective. This is not legal advice. I'm not persuading you to do anything. But depending on the severity of the crime, depending on the severity of what actually happened and the evidence. I do believe in evidence. I do believe in truth. Sometimes we use bias and judgment to decide if someone should go to jail, basically because they might possibly be the killer. I think the evidence should be very, very clear. Sometimes you know, right? We don't need any evidence. But if there's a situation where you don't have enough substantial evidence, concrete evidence, right, then I think we cannot make the judgment. But if the person has been 100% cleared and is very transparent that he is a killer, I think it's tough. People do change, right? There's been plenty of cases in the news right now where a girl got raped and she killed the rapist, right? Okay, now I don't think she should belong in jail. Or someone, hurt someone's child and, they're not here anymore and the justice system did anything. I'm not encouraging you to go find that person. But I think that, maybe there should be a lighter sentence than a life sentence because the person's child is not here anymore and the system failed him. Right. So if I say should I say killer should be given a second chance? Maybe possibly they could be let back into society, but they should be monitored at all times. I don't think they should be able to travel. I think they should, stay in one state, possibly, or one city as a punishment for a certain amount of time or for their whole life. But to be given a second chance, it kind of depends on, if this person is just cold-blooded, did it without any remorse, without any care, no, I don't think there should be a second chance, right? That's just for me personally, it's from my perspective. But justice systems do fail. And I'm not telling people to take anything into their own hands, but personally, I don't think they should be given a second chance, especially depending on the severity of the crime. Now, the second one is if your child is guilty, would you let him go to jail or fight for his freedom? It depends on the age. Of course, I don't want my child in jail, but if they have done something wrong, they do need to face the punishment and not feel like mommy and daddy is going to save them all the time. I highly believe in that. So it depends. That's why I say this comes down to the justice system, because maybe I will first of all try to talk to my son or my daughter and talk to them, right? Talk to my child, right? And see what happened, what's going on? Did you really do it? Are you guilty? Depending on what it is, right? If they get older and they're drunk driving, yeah, you need to go to jail. You need to learn your lesson. I know in a lot of places, I'm not going to say where, some parents will pay the money and the child will go free. I think this is unfair. If the person has done something, but in particular like vehicular manslaughter or things like that, they should face the crime. I think the justice system should change where not all, money could be used to solve the problem. I think they should be treated as people who don't have money. So if my child is guilty, depending on the severity again, I would say, yes, maybe they can go to jail and face the punishment. But if it's they didn't really do anything and I fully believe in them, I would fight for their freedom. Or I feel like the bias from the judge of whatever country, wherever we are, is not fair. Of course, I would fight for the freedom because I feel like, the punishment is not, just. It's not right. So if it was my child, Depending on the severity of the crime, I would say that, because the thing is that, and we're going to talk about parenting throughout this episode. The thing is that, even if you've done your best as a parent, we can't control them, right? But we'll talk about that later. But for me, for this answer, if your child is guilty, would you let, him or her go to jail, or would you fight for the freedom? Of course, I would try to, have some type of fight. But if you really know that they did it and they don't really care, then probably, yes, you should let them, go and learn their lesson and then wake up in some way, hopefully, that you can pray. Third one is a little bit sensitive, but these are all key points from the movie. This is all from the movie. I am not, bringing up these questions randomly, but I'm also doing my best, my absolute best, to not talk about, not spoil the movie. Now, if your underage daughter had got pregnant, what's the step? I know it's sensitive, but we got to talk about the whatever. Guys, I this is a really, really sensitive one because first of all, it's underage. Who's the father? How did it happen? We can't control our kids every time they leave the house. I totally understand that. And you could have the best and absolute most premium environment for your child. I mean, they could literally have everything that they need and they could still mess up. And that's the thing where we have to kind of analyze, is this like a financial thing we could fix? Like, should we buy them more things to keep them more happy or keep them more at home? Or should we get them whatever they want so that, they don't, break the system or break the law? This comes down to your family situation. Now, to the question that says, what's the next step? I mean, for me, I would say, I don't know, I would have to talk to both of the people who conceived this child, right? I would have to talk to the boy. If the boy is like over age, over, the limit, the age limit, then I would have to say, yeah, he should go to jail. But for the daughter, if it was my daughter, I would say, like, honestly, do you have made a decision as a mature person? Like, I would have to ask, do you really want this child? And do you know what's going to come by having this child? Because I'm the dad, right, of the daughter. And if a daughter's underage, I mean, she can't work, she can't do anything. She has to take care of the child. So as a parent, do you take responsibility of the grandchild that you never actually wanted in the first place? Do you help her? Do you, find help for her? I mean, or do you just let her kind of suffer in a way because she should have been more responsible in making a decision? Of course, people make mistakes. We all know that. There's lots of oops babies out there right now. Oops babies, right? That oops means like you didn't plan it. It's here. Now deal with it. Love it or move on, right? Move on means that you need to find help, right? You need to be stronger, but help do it for yourself. That's being responsible. You will be, grateful for that. But just moving on and giving it to a foster home or whatever, you will always have this guilt. I believe that. So if there was underage, I would definitely have to, I would have to talk to them both and talk to the parents of the child. And I would have to see what is their plan. If they don't really have a very clear strategy, then I think then it's time for me to talk to the parents, the other parent directly and not to the child. Because they actually, guys, fools fall in love. We know that. It's called lust. There's no thinking. There's no, strategic move. There's no decision for the future. You just love this person. We were all teenagers. But we hope that we can raise these kids in a very responsible manner so that they can make the right decisions. But they don't always make the decisions. And because they didn't make those decisions, you can't always criticize yourself to say you're a bad parent. Kids will go their way. Right. Now, the next one is, have standardized tests become obsolete or is business booming? Let me repeat that. Has standardized tests become obsolete or is business booming? Guys, okay, when I was in the States in high school, we had to take the SAT. I absolutely dreaded the process to get ready for the SAT. I hated that. These three letters were like a nightmare for me. And then you knew after that, if you wanted to go to business school, is the other added a letter. So it was a 3-letter word. Now it's a 4-letter word, right? It's a GMAT, right? And in my mind, I was thinking out of all the things I've learned in middle school and high school, almost is nothing on this test. And so technically, as I got older and kind of got more mature, I just realized wow, these tests don't really test the full extent of the education that you have received and that you have obtained. Right? They're just, tests that has been created by someone, whatever company, and you have to pass them. And that's why I say, is it obsolete? Because I think that these tests are not really testing us from an educational perspective, right? So remember I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I said I would test people on critical thinking, finance, and being a good human, right? Of course, we need to know some things, right? We need to learn a lot of things. I totally understand that. But at the same time, right, think about it. These tests, right, these are standardized tests. They can't cover every single thing that you've learned. I understand that. But some of the stuff that I remember on the SAT test was some things that I totally never even seen in my life, right? We're talking about vocabulary that you had to learn. So basically, standardized tests means to memorize. And memorize, from my perspective, has nothing to do with education. Memorizing is not education. Memorizing is just memorizing. But if you're not really using it in your life, if you're not applying it in a very, applicable way to how it can benefit you individually or professionally, then what is it, right? So standardized tests, I think they have become obsolete. It's still going to be used. I totally understand that. I'm not against the system. I am against the system individually, but I won't go out there and protest. But I think that in general, standardized tests have become obsolete. And I do think guys, this is my perspective. I do think business is booming. I don't think you can take a test in a couple hours and determine your whole entire future. There are so many people who are so amazing out there in arts, in talent, in design. Where's the SAT for design? Right? Where's the SAT for graphic design and programming? It doesn't exist, guys. So that's what I mean. It's obsolete. It doesn't cover the whole entire concept, right? You can't have a SAT for a graphic designer, for a programmer, for a musician, right? For an artist. It doesn't exist. And there's so many people out there that are so talented, right? It's unfair for them. I think business is booming. That's all. 2, it's obsolete. It doesn't really, categorize. It doesn't really exemplify what we've learned from an educational extent. And also, it's a good business. I'm really, have to say round of applause to the people who created this, because you created a system where we have to take this test. And why I mention that is because in Taiwan, they have these tests every year that literally are determining the kid's entire future. Like literally the school they go to. But in the States, like you could do like kind of bad, but like some universities will still accept you because you're still paying the tuition. You're paying the bill, right? But in Taiwan, it's more like, okay, what's your score? And that score will send you to a certain type of school. But maybe in your life, at that moment in your life, or that year or those couple years in your life, you are really, really smart, but you had a really, really tough time. You were walking up that mountain. You were suffering. It's cold. It's Mount Everest in your life, but you had to take a test. But because of the timing of that test, you can't move on in life to where you want to be because, life was life. So that's why I think it's unfair, because some people just don't have the right timing to take the test mentally, physically, and spiritually to dive into studying. I'm sorry, wrong word, memorizing everything, and to be able to apply it to the test, right? So have standardized tests become obsolete? Yes, from my perspective. My perspective. Business is booming? Definitely. Now, the next one, this is kind of like a cultural differentiation, and we're just going to distinguish two. And I'm not judging either side. It says, teacher, you are wrong, right? Now, why I say this is because when I was growing up in the States, especially elementary school, middle school, to high school, and college, the teacher did not mind that you challenged them, right? They even welcomed it, right? I don't know any teacher who got angry when the student was like, you were wrong. They would be like, okay, I'm the professional. I'm the expert. Try me. Lie, come on, try. But the thing is, let's take that to a Taiwanese culture, right? Now, you can't raise your hand and say, teacher, you're wrong. You can't say, hey, I disagree with this. This is wrong. Can you do it again? It's just not in the culture. And so what that does is that it constrains you as far as the educational range that you receive, because maybe you do have questions, but because you ask that question or raise that question, you might be bothering the class. But I see it from the other side, because maybe someone else was brave enough to ask the question that you wanted to ask, and they saved you time, right? They saved the time, they challenged the teacher. You learned that the student was wrong, and maybe you were using the same formula that the student was using, and you realized that the teacher was right. But it's kind of both ways, right? If the student is wrong, he would get embarrassed, right? He probably won't challenge the teacher again. Teacher wins. If the teacher was wrong, he would say, okay, you're right. Student wins. Confidence gain. It's a win-win. It's a win-win situation, right? But we have the right and ability to challenge a teacher. We have the ability to actually challenge a teacher in the States and say, hey, I disagree. I don't think this is right. And the teacher will say, okay, well, here's a chalk. I guess they're using chalk. I know it's been a while I've been in school, or the marker. You come solve it yourself. You come do it yourself, right? And it's an open competition, right, between you and the teacher, but it's a very healthy competition. So teacher, you are wrong, right? So that's just kind of like a sarcastic way to ask the question, because you can challenge a teacher in the States, but in Taiwan, I know from what I've heard from all my students and their kids, right? They're saying that basically, no, you just listen, sit down, take notes, get ready for the test. Next week, next test. Everything is about test. Now, if you don't like the educational system, that's on you. But if this is the educational system and this is where you are, you don't have the financial freedom to go to the other country, then you need to spend additional time outside of your kids' education to teach them more than just memorizing, because they're going to need more than that, than just being in school. They're going to need way more than just memorizing. If that's the system you're in right now, okay. But that doesn't mean you can't teach them more. I need to repeat that. Just because you're not satisfied with the educational system in Taiwan doesn't mean that's it, that's over. You as a parent can go further. You can put them in different programs. You can take them to different trainings. You can put them in special, programs to learn more things like science, program, and math. You don't have to just leave it to the Taiwan educational system, because it's hard for countries to change. It's hard if you were a child and it was the same system, and it's the same system now for your child or your grandchild, then it's time to just go further, right? So next one. Oh, this reminds me of my child. Should you stop hanging out with friends if your parents don't like them? Well, let's put a time frame on this, right? Let's put a time frame. As an adult, wow. Well, let's first talk about as a child. As a child, you don't have a choice, right? Your parents can literally just say, hey, you can't leave. Or they would just go, I don't know in Taiwan, but in America, like your parents will go to the other parent's house and say, hey, tell your child to stay away from my child. It's just like that. Or if the child showed up, you say, hey, get off my property. Stay away from here, right? It would be very clear, very precise. I'm not sure how it is in Taiwan for the parents, but in the state, I'm just talking from an American perspective. If my parents didn't want another child being around me, I think they would just literally go to the other parent's place and say, hey, I don't want your son or your daughter hanging out with my child. They're a bad negative influence. They're doing drugs or doing whatever, breaking things, whatever. But it's kind of embarrassing because you've hung out with him and you hung out with him, not the parents, but they have to say like, oh, you're a child. Because it could have been me, right? It wasn't me, but it could have been me that was being a negative influence. But parents will support their kids no matter what. So for this question, I think, yes, if your child is hanging out with someone who is like absolutely just, nuts, right? Always smoking, never goes to school, never does his work, breaking things, and everybody knows you're like, this is a problem child, I would have to stop my child. Because the problem is that I had many situations like this growing up. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S., just to remind you that. Atlanta is a big city, a wild city with a lot of interesting people, right? And as kids, we were friends with a lot of people, but people change as they get older. You know that. They change as they get older. And you can't, as a friend, as their friend that you grew up with, you can't change who they become. People join gangs. I'm just talking from my perspective. I got a lot of friends right now who are either not here anymore because of their choices. They're either in jail because of their choices, right? Or they're on the way because of their choices, right? But for me, I was kind of more, my dad has a PhD. My mom, she has a degree. I had two sisters who were very, very smart. They're very, very smart. So I kind of had a little bit of a beautiful, bright light of navigation for my future. A nice trajectory kind of laid out for me. Say, hey, this is possible, because you see the motivation, right? A lot of people don't. I don't judge. But remember, like they always say about the story, right? About the drunk dad, two sons. One son becomes a drunk and the other one becomes successful. So it's all about the choices that you make. And I will always repeat, you are your choices. I always say that. But there's plenty of times, my friends went to jail. My friends were doing drugs, right? My friends even hurt people, right? Plenty of times, right? But I disassociated myself with them because they were doing these things away from me. It was not what I did. I played sports. I went to school. Very simple life. Play sports, went to school. Very simple. Some people that wasn't enough for them. That wasn't enough. They wanted to do more, right? So if your child is hanging out with bad people who have negative influence, you got to let them go. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. We covered all the questions that we could. This is part 1. We're going to jump into the part 2, right? So I'll see you guys in the next part.